PEP started 18 years ago in 1998, and it was started to provide technical support to what is now the Fed Up People's movement. And so a lot of technical and social support in terms of community housing and informal settlement upgrading. And we have a long-standing sort of relationship with the SA and SDI Alliance, so, and a bit of a working history with Andy as well. And the vision of PEP is to create economically and socially and environmentally sustainable human settlements through community-centered incremental housing and upgrading programs. And our mission is very much to provide this bottom-up technical and social support to already organized and low-income communities. And then our three sort of core focus strategic objectives are community-centered housing developments, unblocking stalled projects, and informal settlement upgrading. And then running through all of those projects, you know, we look at sustainability, research, advocacy to bolster them all. So our community-centered housing developments look at sort of two categories, obviously subsidy market and getting subsidy houses built through community processes, and then the more affordable gap or the gap housing market. At the moment we have ROEMO, which is our home backwards. It's 49 houses, and it's making me go grey. We're working with the community to reach subdivision clearance at the moment, and once we get subdivision clearance, we're going to have, this is quite an old render, but we're going to have 49 houses built for a community that have been struggling to get this off the ground for a few years. Really well located infill land in Volta Vreden Valley. And then a future project looking at a similar thing is Vusi and Suncha, which is potentially going to be a lot more houses and a lot more grey hairs. And then unblocking stalled projects. So a lot of the housing or the beneficiaries never get their title deeds, almost 50% of beneficiaries. And then of course, they can't legally sell their house, so there's a lot of informal sales, which means that you can't get the full value for your house. And so we also focus on getting people their title deeds. And one of the projects we have is Vukunsinzele, where there's 235 residents. And then we obviously have big challenges in this area because these houses were built 16 years ago, and there's been additions and alterations made, none of which are sort of council approved. So we have to try and now negotiate with the city to say well, this is what is here. You know, we need to get these people title deed. How do we get around that? But that's going really well. So hopefully people will have title in the next year to 5 years, depending on whereabout they are. And then another one is Hazeldean, which is similar. You know, the roads have been transferred, but there's a whole bunch of other holdups that we are trying to, you know, really provide that support where we can negotiate between a community and the city to get past all those bureaucracies. And then what I'll be talking mostly about tonight is our informal settlement upgrading program. And with the policy shift that John was talking about, we've also sort of tried to shift the focus of our work over to that space, and to really look at short-term goals of providing basic services immediately, and then longer-term goals of working towards development plans and kind of really trying to have the community drive the processes towards in-situ upgrading. So the project I'll be talking about and that we took John to is called Polo Park, and it's in Philippi. And at the moment we're trying to mediate between the city and the community to build something, hopefully. So I don't know if this pointer is going to work. Yeah. So there's Philippi, and then there's this tiny little strip of land which is over here, which is Polo Park. If any of you are familiar with the Philippi Hub or the Philippi Village that's been started by the Bertha Foundation, that's just on the corner over there. This is Stock Road. And it's this skinny, weird leftover piece of land. When I went to the deeds office, they said, "Oh, this is weird. I've never seen this before." And on the title deed, it doesn't say like City of Cape Town or Western Cape. It says public space. So it's completely strange. And I said to the guy, "Well, what would happen?" And he said, "Well, to do a transfer, he would assume that everyone has to sign off, like everyone in South Africa, because it's public space, it belongs to everyone." So hopefully that's not the case. But this is Polo Park, extremely dense. There's 961 dwellings on the land. Let me quickly talk a little bit. So what you can see here is what they now call Better Life. And I think it was about 10 years ago, this whole area was an informal settlement, and this side got upgraded to a Better Life, and these 961 families were still left at Polo Park. This is the Golden Arrow Depot, so these are all buses you can see over here. And this is Marley Tiles that have a nice big piece of land there. And I'll refer to this a lot. This down here, and then it like curves down there, is the open stormwater channel. And so Polo Park does have toilets and electricity connections. So they have the very basic services. But then in 2013, PEP was involved in sort of rapid settlement appraisals across 27 settlements. And we worked with the communities to assess their sort of long, medium term goals, and really just look at the major problems within the settlement, and sort of just do like a rapid appraisal of what's going on. And what came out of that, and that was part of a NAS program, what came out of that was, in Polo Park, this was the open stormwater channel, and it was obviously a huge environmental and health issue. There were lots of dead things in it. And so at that time, the community was sort of feeling mobilized. The NAS project had really pushed them to get a committee together. They had a committee. They were having sort of semi-regular community meetings, and using that momentum from that, we really sort of pushed them to go to the city and say, like, we need this to be fixed. It's urgent. It's disruptive to our life. People were getting diarrhea. There was a terrible rat problem. And through that process, it was coincidental maybe, but like very lucky that the city had obviously identified it as something that needed upgrading. So it kind of got fast-tracked, and then it went through a process of being upgraded and turned into a lovely public space within the settlement. And that's what it looked like 2 days before the mayor came to see it. It doesn't quite look like that now. But then, of course, the mayor came to, this was in April, so there's Brett Heron, and then the mayor walking along, looking at how nice everything is. And we were really excited about it, because we thought, like, yes, the community is obviously feeling very empowered right now. Let's use this momentum to really drive a rapid design process with them around housing and the long-term development of the settlement. So it was a little bit experimental, and John spoke about, there's been this focus on top structure, but the process is really important. And we acknowledge that, and we accept that, and we have definitely hit our heads because we might have tried to jump a little bit too far ahead. But we thought, like, let's see what can happen if we really push this and we do a rapid design process, and then we take it to the city and see what happens. So that was our thinking. And then the mayor came to open and she said, now that you've had this upgrade, I'm sure you were thinking about housing, and sort of planted this housing seed in the community's mind. So like, yes, of course we're thinking about housing. So we went to a meeting with her, or the community went to a meeting with her, and she said, well, we've identified some nearby pockets of land that we are hoping to transfer to you for housing. So suddenly we had a community who realized that they were on a really small piece of land, and that they were happy to go to explore densities, higher densities, because they didn't want to move, to now being told like, oh well, if you have individual houses, you can get 250 on Paula Park land. If we go with the double story unit, we can get 600, but this is obviously just very boring rows and rows to get numbers, no real urban design there. And then if we go 4 stories and sort of like a bit of a Barcelona block, we can get 1,300 or 1,300 houses. So that, you know, and then we started talking about this idea of potentially renting out so that you cross-subsidize. And there wasn't a lot of excitement around this one. But it was generally sort of accepted that, okay, well, let's go for this option, because that means that, you know, we can get, what's that, 60% of the people to remain where they are, but we'll only go for this option if we know that the other 360 households are going to be located somewhere and they are also going to get a house. So there was like a little bit of negotiation there. And then we did another workshop where we started to look at sort of different types of courtyard blocks, and very like Charles Correa inspired typology on that side, and a very sort of standard courtyard on that side. And we started looking at housing typology. And this is where I sort of said, you know, we might have jumped ahead of ourselves, because that obviously created a number of expectations that we now had to try and rein in, because we started talking about housing so soon. And the idea was that we would develop a plan and that the community would take it to the city, so that the community had something when they went to the city and said, they weren't just saying we want houses, they were saying we've thought about it, we've discussed it with designers, and this is the type of houses we want. Anyway, what it meant that when we went to visit the Empower Shack, there was a little bit of like miscommunication, and there was a resistance to learning from other communities and sharing with other communities. So that was one of our big challenges. And then also this idea of shifting this perception of like, what is a house and what does a house look like? So one of the first models we took had a slanted roof, just a mono-pitched roof. And everyone was like, no, we can't have that roof. It has to be like a roof. So I said, but why? And no, it just has to be. So there's these preconceived notions, and oh, but Better Life got this, and Better Life has that, and this immediate comparison. So these are just, some of the, and then the obvious big challenge is if we are relying on subsidy money, like there's obviously only so much subsidy allowance can do. And that's not to say that there haven't been opportunities. Having, you know, a really good working relationship with the committee, we've been able to implement this public space improvement project. So we partnered with 2 other designers, and they had built this prototype, and the committee sort of rallied around. They got buy-in from the dwellings that are around this public space, and we managed to implement this project, which is called the Giving Tree. And we got some sponsorship from Carabrick to get some bricks in there, and we have a tree coming. So the idea is that like there's a nice big fruit tree, and there's a tap point, and you can come and you can sit there. And this is a prototype these designers built, so they're hoping to have this implemented in more communities where public space is not really celebrated or acknowledged. And then these horizontal learning platforms, so this was actually at the Better Living Challenge. This is our community leader, Teenage. And then there was another one at DAG, and the more that we were able to expose the committee to other community leaders who are going through the same thing, the more they are learning about these processes, and they're realizing, like, okay, we're not going to get, just because the mayor said, like, let's talk about houses, doesn't mean we're going to get houses this year. And there's sort of that acceptance and that growing understanding that this is a long process. So that's been really great for us. And then sort of moving forward, we're looking at alternative funding opportunities. So there's no saving schemes. So we're going to look at sharing ideas again with other communities that have already started saving schemes. And then looking at potentially investigating a partnership with the Philippi Village, which is just actually the two land parcels do connect. And then hopefully we'll be able to really push the alternative typology boundaries, building on all of the work, like the Empower Shack work and the other work that's been done in Pretoria and Durban, and really trying to say to the community, like, okay, once we've got buy-in from the city, you are going to get houses, but let's push it a bit more so you get more than a house, so you get a sustainable development. So then, yeah, this is the layout we're looking at the moment. So creating like big sort of blocks and then smaller courtyards within those blocks. And we heard today that, okay, so this has just been our process, and we heard today that the mayor has agreed to meet them next Thursday. So hopefully they'll be able to present that idea. We've got buy-in about this layout from the community. So they'll hopefully be able to present it to her and see what happens. Yeah, thank you.